Hey guys, welcome back to another episode on the WRC build here. In this one, we are going to jump right into doing all the metal work in the rear end for the quarter panels to go on top of and conclude the rear rocker section as well. All right, now that we've got our front end framework done, we're going to work on our rear wheel well here. So as you can see, and in the previous video, I've already taken off the outer skin. With the quarter panel hung, all I did was trace around it with a marker and cut accordingly. For a primary cut, it is still not quite enough. We've got this coming down the rear bumper, which protrudes, so that will be taking off as well. And we'll be making a filler to fill in this gap. So my first focus is going to be getting more of this inner wheel well out, because we've got to bring it all the way up to here, which is quite a distance, so it's going to be a good bit of cutting. I'm going to worry about filling in the bumper as I work my way back and get the first part of the wheel well done. So what I'm going to do is trace along here again inside the inner wheel well. Now I know up here we kind of just lose definition with respect to our cutting point, but we can always cut more if needed. So I'm going to go ahead and chop this out, and we can start to plan for making a filler that's going to weld into the inner wheel well and come out here. Alright, right here I'd like to point out, this is the shock tower perch, or at least the bottom of it. So this is structural. I don't actually want to cut right through there, because then I will disconnect the bottom of the shock tower perch from the wheel well. What I'm going to do is 1, 2, 3 spot welds. I'm going to drill those guys out for now, and I'm hoping I can get this to bend up and match the profile of our new wheel well. So we're using a spot weld drill bit. This is a pretty handy little bit. It's basically flat with a little tiny tip. Alright, now we've got that lifted off. I mean, if you guys don't have a spot weld drill bit, it doesn't really matter in this instance, because we're removing this under part and you're gonna get holes through the top removing the spot welds anyway. Where they are handy is removing the rest of the quarter panel like so, because you don't really want to make extra holes here because you may be using this real estate. Alright, here we are with our first cut. Next thing I'm going to do on some of the spots where this is more vertical than horizontal, so that's kind of goofy to mount your other wheel well to. So I'm going to start to bang this up in a more horizontal. I could probably start it with vice grips, turn it, whereas from here onward, the fender is still horizontal, so that's going to be fine to leave as is. We will have to bare metal it, and we'll get into our metal prep and preservation before we actually weld our piece on. Right now we're just trying to make the piece. Okay, with our wheel well lip now turned up, everything looking flat, I'm going to go through and wire wheel about 1 inch of this back so I get to some shiny bare metal. I'm going to put the quarter panel back on, secure it in place, and we are going to begin to make a template for our filler. So ABW was nice enough to supply every single customer that buys this kit with their own template making material. So I've measured the wheel arch. I think I need, I don't know, let's say 40 inches should do. So I'm gonna cut a good slice of this, 40 inches. This is probably more than 40 inches. There we go, we got our wheel well template material. Here we are with the cardboard back on the car. So I probably cut more than I needed, but that's fine. Cardboard is a lot easier to cut than metal. So what we're gonna do is our outside edge of the box, our nice straight one that I didn't cut, that could be our inside, because then we already have a nice straight line and it does line up beautifully. So yeah, get that, you know, 50-50 overlap on your existing wheel well, and you got a nice straight line. Then you can come up and you can trace all the way around and cut that piece out, and that should be a rough template to start. We'll do some fine tuning after that. Here's a little tip too. Cardboard is generally very straight. This is not straight. If we put our straight piece of cardboard in there, it's gonna be weird to try and hold it up to the curvature of the quarter panel. Take your cardboard and with the corrugations running through it, roll it up. See your rolling skills. So you roll it all up. Now you have a sweet, soft, curved cardboard with our cardboard template somewhat in place. With the rear, even though I have more to fill in here, to keep things less complicated, I'm gonna focus on, like I said, doing the wheel well first, then I'll add in the bumper filler. So this is more material going further than needed. So it will end here. What I can do now on the top, I know like the profile is not sitting perfect, but that's as low as you can cut the wheel well for this to recess. So when we actually do our metal filler, it's gonna end up bending up to meet this lip inside here. So what I'm gonna do is trace right along the edge. And then after that, I think I'm gonna add an extra inch for flaring up to make a backing for the quarter panel. So here we are with our template. This is our inner lip, this is our outer lip. We do want to add about an extra inch on the outer lip. Right here, this little jog is where the rest of the filler goes into the door well or the door jamb. On that, you can see the flange flare is so little, there is so little material, unless we had it bending in the other way. Down here I would like to get something so we can add some rigidity other than just a straight piece of sheet metal to that. But up here, a straight piece of sheet metal is gonna be as good as it gets. So this down here is our bottom. So as you can see, that's where our actual edge is. But like I said, I want to try and add some material for rigidity right at the bottom where we have some real estate to do so. So I'm going to leave that there so that I end up tracing a piece of metal that will facilitate for that. So I've decided I'm actually going to make the wheel well filler out of two pieces. I'm going to split it right there where the end of my quarter panel and door jamb begins. I figure that will make it a little more manageable, getting everything just right to fit together. So I could work on this section as one piece and then this section for the next. All right, we've placed in the door filler here. On the outside, when pushed tight, I have traced a line right along the edge. I've made another line here where I'm gonna leave this bit of material to make a flange to flip up, because I do have some vertical here that I can use. Down here, we're just gonna butt up into this edge. Here we are going to leave this excess material, real estate here, that we can make a flange to mount to. All right, a little bit of tuning on our door well piece here. So we have brought up this flare, a little bit there. It's starting to somewhat do what it's supposed to do. Obviously metal, now that we have bent this edge, it's gonna keep this rigid. You're not gonna be able to bend that. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take it over to the stretcher. If we stretch this, then it should start to curve this bottom. You can see immediately the curve there. Now, we don't wanna go too much. So let's test that out. That's quite a curve. Too much curve. So it stays pretty straight down here. So I'm gonna grab a marker and say right here is where I want it to start to mellow out. Got some rough fitment action in the door section here. This is nice and tight. This one I take the quarter panel off. I'm gonna flare this out. I got a little bit more to shave there. With our front door section filler piece roughed in here, I'm gonna start to work on the rear. It's pretty easy to bend, but what I'm gonna start with is getting my lip up here, and then I'll probably bring it over into the stretcher and start to curve it. We have in now our rough cut of the fender filler. So the bit of tweaking, we have the fender or the quarter panel filler in. I'm gonna throw the quarter panel back on. All right, with the quarter panel back on, we are starting to get the filler. You can see it's a nice tight fit, because what I wanted to do is put panel bond between this lip and the quarter panel. Yeah, overall decent, and for the most part we have filled the gap with metal. Alright, we've got our little template there made out of cardboard underneath of the quarter panel here. I'm going to take the quarter panel off again, make that little guy out of metal. We have our rough winglet on there. So what I'm gonna do now is put the quarter panel back on, make sure this profile is correct and the quarter panel goes in far enough. So I've thrown on our rear bumper here. Now that we have these little plates beginning to fill in our gap here, we don't have a spot to clamp our bumper to anymore. So what I'm gonna do at this point, just so my bumper and reference point always go back to the same spot, I'm gonna start doing the quick release here for the rear bumper, so that at least every time I put the bumper on and off, it's not just kind of hanging out there. And like I said, I wanted to isolate the quarter panel attached by itself and the bumper by itself. I didn't want the bumper hanging off the quarter panel because we're gonna mold it. With our bumper now in place, I'm gonna work on the filler here. As you can see, I wanna cut a little bit more material because this is almost flush with the bumper, but I want this recessed a bit so the filler panel goes in behind the bumper. Then over to the end of our rocker cap, I'm gonna work on filling this in as well. I've got the rocker cap in place here. The idea is this will end up touching that. The wheel well extension will end up getting welded to that. This kind of flange will be for mounting the back of the quarter panel on. Next thing I'm going to do here, as I said earlier, our striker hole ends up, one is able to be used in the original bottom one, and then we had to make another one in the top. I'm going to put a little tack on this nut, make sure it's lined up, then I can weld that guy in. That will be fine, and conclude that. We've now got our kick panel backing plate all done, so the quarter panel will go on top of this and it will be able to be panel bonded to this, so it will be nice and rigid in the bottom. Now I am ready to put my wheel well filler back in. I've got everything all zinc coated, the pieces and the car. So what I'm going to do is put the filler in, put the quarter panel on, start to tack some things in place. We now have all the metal welded. We have not yet grinded it because we are not done with our fab just as of yet. So now we are looking to make a filler between the wheel well and the bumper. Alright, we're now at the point that we need to figure out what we are going to do to fill our car with gas. So if you are retaining your original gas tank, you would end up putting kind of like a fill cap here. Originally, I thought that's what we were going to do and retain our original gas tank. So what you do is drill your hole, end up connecting a pipe from your fill cap to your existing filler neck. However, we are going to get rid of the gas tank on this. We're going to do a fuel cell, or someone's going to do a fuel cell. So I'm going to move the filler cap back a bit Reason why I'm gonna move it back is so that we don't end up having to now go through the shock tower on the inside of the trunk. So from here, there's decent real estate where we'll be able to then travel to the fuel cell, either in the trunk or in the back seat. So we now have our filler neck out. I have welded the hole shut with a plate. Then over into the back there, you can see where if we did try to later run a fuel cell and use that same fill cap spot, we would have this in the way of routing a pipe to wherever we're gonna put the tank. So ours is more gonna end up around here. We might have to cut a little bit of this, but I don't want it going any further back and getting too close to the taillight. Now this is what we have for the fill cap. It is a pretty big diameter. It does have some pretty thick foam, so I'm hoping that is enough to work with the contour of our panel here. This is like a slam fill kind of thing. So you just slam your can into it and fill. So it does take a quite a big impact when you go and do that. So it does need to be, you know, braced behind, which we still have the original quarter panel sheet metal right there. So that should be fine with the bracket behind it. All right, we now have each side of the rear quarter metal work done. Everything is all shaved, all sanded, all prepped. We're gonna go ahead and get some epoxy primer on this. All right, now we are moving along and we are ready to begin to prepare to panel bond on our quarter panels here. So we have obviously all our metal work done at this point. We have gone ahead. We have seam sealed everything. We're using a gray seam sealer so it's easy to cover. Primary goal with this is to do the wheel wells in white, so a nice gray is easy to cover. All right guys, gonna wrap up the video there. Thank you for watching and till the next one.